Hello friends, welcome back to Aunt Debbie's Boutique. We are working on a series of Christmas gifts, or gifts for any occasion for that matter, between now and Christmas. And for the majority of them, I'm designing my own patterns. So I apologize that I skipped Wednesday's video, but it's difficult to design and test and record 2 videos a week when you're doing all the designing yourself. But I'm going to try to keep up the 2 videos a week. Today we're going to be sewing for a young girl. I am going to be making this for my great niece, who I believe is 4 years old. And it is going to be a Moses basket for a doll. What you're going to need is your outside fabric. I believe this is about 17 or 18 inches long and about 10 inches wide. You'll need, this is the base of the basket. You'll need a lining the same size, and then I am going to use 2 different types of interfacing. I like my baskets to be nice and firm and hold their shape. There's nothing that bothers me more than to put all that work into making a fabric basket of some sort and it be floppy and not hold its shape. So I have experimented a lot with different interfacings, and this is just my favorite combination, and that is to use, this is Pellon FF77, and it's called Flex Foam. It's a sew-in interfacing. I've used it before on videos, but it's one of my favorites. I just wish it was iron-on, but you can't iron on foam, I realize that. And then my other favorite is Peltex one-sided fusible, ultra-firm fusible stabilizer. And this is real stiff. It is number 71F. And of course, I buy it by the bolt because that's what us hoarders of sewing supplies do. So we're going to, there's only 2 pattern pieces, and I will try to get this pattern in my Etsy shop by the end of the week. And the one piece is the bottom, and you will cut 1 each of the stabilizers and 1 each of the lining and the outside fabric. And then this is a very long piece, but it's cut on the fold. And see, I should have measured this beforehand, but it is about 46 inches long. And I cut this out of a border print at the length of the fabric. But most of the times you would cut something like this the width of the fabric, and if you do that, this is going to be wider than your fabric. So you'll have to cut it, not cut it on the fold, but have a seam here at the center back, which won't matter at all. Just cut it a 1/4 of an inch longer, and then let me get my pattern piece here. Here's my pattern piece, and this is to be on the fold. If you want to just cut it the width of your fabric, just do a 1/4 of an inch wider here, and then sew a seam there. And it won't hurt the final product at all. And again, we're going to need both types of interfacing. Now, I've been testing this all week, and I had several goals, and one of them was to get a nice firm basket. The other one was to make it as simple as possible so that beginners could do it. And so the method that I'm going to show you to put this together is a method that I think is going to give us the best of all worlds. There are many different ways you could put this basket together, and feel free, if you're an experienced seamstress, feel free to do it however you want. If you want to put the basket, the outside together first, and then the lining, and then sew them together, that's fine. But I want to be able to quilt these pieces, and I don't want to quilt it after it's all put together. So that's why I chose this method, and we're going to learn how to do a flat felt seam. Okay, I also failed to mention that we need 2 strips for handles. These are 4 inches wide by 15 inches long, or you could, and I'm also going to use a foam strip of 1-inch strip for each of those. Or you could purchase some webbing. I got this off of Amazon, cotton webbing strap, and you could use this for your handles on your basket. I wanted mine to match, so I'm not going to use this. I'm going to save this for our next project and just make my own, but know that you could do that. I'm also going to use some trim around the basket just to dress it up. And if you're a beginner and you're wanting to simplify it, this would be the one step I'd leave out, but it's not that difficult. And this is the trim I really want to use, but I don't have enough of it. And I have enough of this, but I use this in my practice basket. So I think I'm going to go with this and just use it on the high part of the basket and not use any trim on the rest. Feel free to design yours however you want. And one other suggestion, and I did not do this because I was short on time, but I suggest when you're giving a gift like this to a child that you Scotch guard it. This will help it from getting dirty so fast. There is white on this, and it's not going to take any time at all for that to get dirty, but Scotch guard will help it. So I will Scotch guard this after it's put together, which is not the best way to do it. It's better to do it before you start. But I just had to get to making this video, and I didn't have the time to do that and let it dry, especially doing more than one coat. So just follow the directions on the bottle, but I highly recommend this for any sort of toy you're making for a child. Okay, you will notice that my interfacings are considerably smaller than my pattern pieces. I cut them out the same as the pattern piece, and then I went around and drew a 1-inch border just using my handy dandy Nancy Zeman seam gauge. I set it at 1 inch and just drew dots all the way around and connected the dots. We are going to have a 1-inch seam allowance all around here and around the bottom of this piece, just due to the fact that we're going to do a flat felled seam so we can hide our seam later. And so I don't want all that bulk in it, so then I drew the same circle around on my interfacing and I cut it down, and it fits on there pretty perfectly. Now, when you're dealing with interfacing like this, it's hard to get it perfect, but this, I'm pleased with this. I've got them pinned together so they don't come apart just yet. So the first thing I want to do is, I'm going to have to take them apart now. I want to adhere this stiff interfacing to the back of my lining fabric. So I'm just gonna line it up on my lines. I'm gonna give it a little bit of a press, but follow the directions that come with your interfacing, and they say to iron it from this side. I just gave it a little press from that side to make sure I got it in the right place. But this calls for using a steam iron. And this interfacing is going to keep our basket stiff. But I didn't want it just stiff. I wanted it to be soft too. So this is going to pad it a little bit. Now, oh, that steam got rid of my lines, but that's all right. I can center this. This one, we're going to have to pin in place. Actually, it's probably best to stitch around the edge of it, real close to the edge so it doesn't move. And I think I'll go do that right now, and you can join me. Okay, now I've got this stitched on since we can't iron it on, and I did it very, very close to the edge, just barely catching it, just to hold it in place. Now, I'm going to make a sandwich out of these. I just have threads all over my sewing space here. I apologize. My daughter has sewed her Halloween costume at this sewing machine, and she didn't leave it in the condition Mama likes it. But okay, I am going to just pin this in place. I want to pin from the other side, and I'll show you why. I need to quilt this piece, and the best way, the reason I chose this lining fabric is because it gives me a line to quilt on, and that way I don't have to draw a bunch of lines. If yours doesn't have a pattern you can quilt on, get out your erasable pen, whatever one you have, and use a straight edge and make your lines. It takes a little extra time, but you'll be glad that you did it. Otherwise, your lines won't be straight. But what I'm going to do is stitch on the diagonal and leave about 3 or 4 rows in between each one, and go diagonally and then back the other way, and that will give us a diamond pattern. Now, I'm going to stitch right up to the edge of the foam. I'm not going to go all the way to the edge. And as I do a row, I'll come down. When I get here, I'll stitch at the edge of the foam and stitch over till my next row, and then go up, and then on the edge of the foam and go back down again. That way I don't have a bunch of knots and loose threads on the back when I'm done. Okay, I will put the camera in fast motion and you can watch me quilt this. I forgot to mention that I chose black thread because I thought it would not show as much. When I did my practice one, I used white thread because I didn't want black X's going through Snow White's face because she's all white on this, but I didn't like it. I think I'll prefer this way. This way. All right, this is the final quilted product with an inch border all the way around. And I hope you saw how I did on the curves. I had to count to make sure I left 3 rows in between each row. So I'd count over to decide where the next row went and then just sew around the curve until I got to that row. You can quilt this anywhere from 1 inch to 4 inches apart. I think the rule of thumb is not to leave a space bigger than 4 inches unquilted, on a quilt anyway. And I would recommend you do 1 to 2 inches on this. I'm going to give this a steam because that always helps. And now we have a nice firm bottom to our basket. So when the doll's laid in there, once it's supported on the sides, it won't sag. Now we're going to do the same thing on the part that goes around the edge. Now, I trimmed, I don't know if you can see my markings, but I marked 1 inch along the bottom here and 1/2 inch at the top, because we're not doing a flat felt seam there. We don't need as big of a seam allowance. And I cut my pieces down the same way. The reason these are pinned together is I actually cut out one of them normally and then trimmed it down, and then I laid it on the other interfacing and cut it out exactly the same, so I didn't have to waste that inch all the way around on both of them. So we're going to have to adhere these pieces . I'm going to line this up on the lines I drew, and I'm going to press it from this side just a little bit, just so it stays where I want it to. The reason they have you press from the other side is it adheres better just going through the fabric and not this thick interfacing. This doesn't hurt to press it from this side. You just want to make sure you end up pressing it from the other side to get it to adhere. And of course, we're going to quilt this, so in the end it won't matter. It's going to be held in place very well. Now I'm going to do it. Okay, it's a little bit long here on the ends. We need a 1/4 inch seam here too. That's probably okay. Here. Of course, on this one, let's pin it in place and then just stitch it around the edges. And fix it as I go. Unfortunately, I lost some of my coverage due to operator error. But right here, I am sewing with right sides together, both the front and the lining, the seam at the end. It's only about a 4-inch seam, and it will make the border edge a circle. Here I have put the right sides together of the outside fabric with the inside lining fabric, and I'm sewing a seam all the way around the top edge right up next to where we stop the interfacing. I have also sandwiched in the pink trim that I was using by putting it facing sandwiched in between the lining and the outside, but it is pointing down, and you can barely see the pink peeking out when I'm adjusting the seam as I go around. And I only put it from the curve on the curved back side. I'm sorry that you weren't able to see me pin it. Now I'm just top stitching after I turned the lining to the inside. I'm top stitching right on top of the seam we just made. Now I'm just stitching the bottom down to hold it in place while I do the quilting, and then I will quilt it just like I did the bottom part by stitching on the diagonal lines and leaving 3 lines in between each line that I sew. Now that I have it all quilted, you can see what it looks like. I'm ready to put it together. Now, if you have done this far and you say, oh no, my seams at the bottom aren't even. Well, guess what? Neither are mine. And the reason for that is that foam. It just uses up a lot of this fabric on the top. And the reason I had you put the foam on the top and the flatter, stiffer interfacing on the lining is because in the end, the only thing that matters, the only thing we need a 1-inch seam for is this lining on the band, on the outside part of it. So if this is shorter, it doesn't matter. We're going to trim all the other seams to about 1/4 inch. So don't worry about that. Mine did the very same thing that yours will do just because of that foam. Okay. We want the right side to the inside, and we want the right side of the bottom facing up. So what we have outside is all lining. I'm going to fold this. Oh, and by the way, I see a mistake I made. I folded this back this way because my intent was for this to lay down, but it's obviously going to stand up. So I should have folded these edges back the other way. So don't make my mistake, but I'll put a little match or something to the edge of it and seal it, and I don't think my great niece will care. We want to get the center back of this part and mark it. And mark it down here at the bottom particularly. The top really doesn't matter. We want the center of this on both ends. And then we're going to use our seam down here as the center for this. And I'm going to pin this. And we're going to use our seam, where we marked, we're going to line up those two and match it there. Then the rest, we're just going to force fit. So I'm going to pin it in a few places, but I'll probably fudge the pins as I go around, because since this is a curve, it's going to be real hard to get it laying smooth with just pins. We're going to have to do it as we go. But what we do want to do, now this is the important part. We want to take a full 1-inch seam based on this fabric, on your lining fabric. I don't care if it's only a 1/4-inch seam on something else. We want a full 1 inch on this all the way. So we're using this as our guide. And you will see there's a method to my madness when we get through. Okay, I'm going to attempt to pin this around. As you can see, it fits in there just right. It should. I drew my pattern up with the exact same measurements. Put these pins this way because I need to have that on top when I'm sewing, and that may make it a little bit bulkier to sew from that side, but we just need to make sure we have a full 1 inch there. I hope you're not finding this too difficult. It's really all simple seams. It gets bulky with all this interfacing, but that's what makes it so nice in the end. Okay, I'll finish pinning this and meet you over at the sewing machine. Now, you probably can't see it because it's white on white here, but that's the only color of tape that I have at the moment. But I marked where 1 inch is so that I can keep my seam 1 inch. Okay, I'm just going to sew all the way around the edge, and I apologize in advance if I knock the camera because this thing gets kind of bulky up here at the top. So Right here, I am trimming all the seams except for the black polka dotted seam, which is the lining on the outside edge of this seam. The rest of them I'm cutting shorter, and we're going to fold them, fold it under the 1-inch seam, and then fold it over again and stitch it to cover our seam. Now I'm just turning it right side out and showing you how to iron the strips for the straps. I will then take them over to the machine and sew them down both sides and then attach them to the basket by putting one of them right up at the point of the curve and the other end of the handle 5 inches away from that. I will do that on both sides, and I will turn under about a 1-inch piece of it to the bottom and sew it in an X. Okay, we have our handles on. Our basket is all made. And now all it needs is a doll. And I purchased this off of Amazon. It's I believe it's a 12-inch doll. This will hold up to a 16-inch doll, I believe. And I think this was about $24 or so. And I will link it in the description below if you're interested in it too. But let's see what she looks like. She comes with a bottle, a pacifier, and a minky blanket that's very, very soft. Okay, there is our finished product. I am pleased with how stiff the sides are. That was my main intention in putting all that padding in there, all the interfacing. You can just use batting or something else if you would prefer. Let me show you one I made, a practice one I made. I didn't completely finish it. I didn't put the handles on it, but the sides just weren't stiff enough for me on this one, and this has just the foam in it. Now you could put foam and the stiff, the 71F I believe it's called, interfacing in it and not quilt it, and it might be easier to manage. So the only hard part about this is the bulk. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope this isn't something you think was too difficult to get through just because of the bulk. But this makes a wonderful gift for a young girl, and I will have my pattern up on my Etsy shop hopefully within a week, and usually for the first 7 days they're 25% off. They're only $2.50 regular price. I think 25% off makes it about $1.87 or something. I'm not in it to make money off the patterns. I just need to pay my Etsy fees for that. Okay, if you enjoyed this tutorial, would you please like it? Leave me a comment, suggestions, things you want to see. This is the gift we're making for a little girl. Next week I've got one for a little boy, and it's going to have some bulk to it too. We're going to be making a carrying case for toy cars, like Matchbox cars and Silly Fly and Hot Wheels like that. And it will be a little bulky too, but we're not going to have to worry about the inside seams this time like we did there. I'm going to show you a different technique to use on it. Okay, if you're new to the channel, I'd appreciate you subscribing. Otherwise, I will see you next time. And remember, whatever you do, do it to the glory of the Lord. I apologize for all the camera problems today, but after the fact, there's no way to fix it short of starting the whole project over. So I hope you were able to understand what I've done. And if you have any questions, just send me a message in the comment section or through my Etsy shop, and I will be glad to help you. Thank you.